Okay, we should be live. Cool. Okay, so let's check. Looks like sound is good. Should be an interesting stream tonight. It's a little bit odd. Some technical issues have been occurring while I've started trying to get this started, but we will make it work. I have an interesting stream. We are going to talk about Brian Keating's latest discussion with Nick Bostrom. I did have a question for Nick Bostrom that was not answered during his talk with Brian Keating, but they seemed pretty limited for time. But I would like to know the answer. If anybody does know the answer, please comment it in the chat. But I will be also just probably looking it up at some point in the stream. I asked, does Nick Bostrom think that an AGI, does he think it would arise naturally, or does he think we have to try and make one? And I would imagine that he thinks we have to try and make one, just based on his statements in the stream. But I think that's wrong. I think he's pretty wrong about some current assumptions on AI, and I understand that he, wrote the book, Superintelligence. But we're going to talk about what a superintelligence is, what is AGI, or artificial general intelligence, how it's not really artificial, and how that's different from the current, neural net learning algorithm based AIs that we have currently, which are just basically math equations, not really learning. We call it machine learning. It's not really learning. True learning can only be done by a sentient being, and it's not a sentient being. But so here, oh yeah, I mean, I guess announcements. No real announcements, I guess. I definitely check out the last stream that we did. If you haven't, that was a great stream. That is my announcements. We do have super chats enabled now, but that was as of last week. Seems to be working. So I will answer your question even if you don't super chat it. But I always appreciate supporting this project. There are links to my website below, links to Brian Keating's channel below, and we're going to get started. So this is the stream that we're going to be discussing right here. If you go to Brian Keating's channel, which I highly recommend you subscribe to, hit the bell notification. Do that for this channel as well if you'd like to keep up to date. But Brian has a lot of great content, and this is the stream that we're going to be looking at with Nick Bostrom. It's called Superintelligence and the Simulation Hypothesis, I believe. Yep. Okay. So with that, let's get into Nick Bostrom's background. I've gone over Brian Keating's background before many times on here because I talk about many streams that he's done. He wrote Losing the Nobel Prize. He is a physics professor at UC San Diego, which is a beautiful place. I was down near La Jolla recently for my anniversary, and it was quite nice. It's a very nice place. Brian Keating is an American cosmologist. He works at the observations of the cosmic microwave. He works on observations of the cosmic microwave background. He's distinguished professor of physics at University of California, San Diego. And Nick Bostrom. Here we go. Nick Bostrom is a Swedish-born philosopher at the University of Oxford, known for his work on existential risk, anthropic principle, human enhancement ethics, superintelligence risks, and the reversal test. I don't know what that is, actually. Heuristic designed to spot and eliminate status quo bias. I bet you this is similar to my thinking model, essentially. Yep. Yeah, it is. We'll talk about this in a minute, actually. But, I don't know what it has to do with Nick Bostrom. Nick Bostrom believes that a superintelligence, which he defines as any intellect that greatly exceeds the cognitive performance of humans in virtually all domains of interest, is a potential outcome of advancements in artificial intelligence. He views the rise of superintelligence as potentially highly dangerous to humans, but nonetheless rejects the idea that humans are powerless to stop its negative effects. He co-signed a list of 23 principles that all AI development should follow. Let's see what these 23 principles are. So, for anyone who doesn't know, sentient singularity theory that I work on, sentientsingularity.com, to see more information, that arose because I was trying to understand the political implications of artificial general intelligence and what its inevitable political goals would be, what is required of it, how do you make one. It was just a philosophical exploration of this, and it led to exploring consciousness, which led to the project that it is now, because it led to seeing the patterns that I had mapped of consciousness, or of mind, I guess, a better way of putting it, and how that pattern is everywhere. The 23 principles to prevent artificial intelligence from destroying us all. Okay. Let's see here. Asimov's 3 laws of robotics are, like, everybody knows about those from iRobot, but okay. Everybody keeps talking about these 23 principles of AI, but they're not listing them. It's very annoying. Okay, here we go. First principle, research goal. AI research should always be directed towards beneficial intelligence and not just put into action without proper direction. The whole motto behind such initiatives is to create value. I don't understand. Is that like a singular principle? When investments are driven for AI, adequate measures and funding must be directed to ensure the project is beneficial. This principle includes thorny questions catering to computer science, this law, legal and ethical status of AI research. Okay, I don't understand. Science policy. Much like AI researchers who hold significance in AI initiative, the policymakers also play a key role in ensuring that technology is deployed or researched upon with the utmost regard for safety. The policymakers stress on a stringent set of rules which focus on better implementation of AI. This link of technology with policies, what drives best practices. Research culture, race avoidance. We're just going to read these. Safety, failure, transparency, judicial transparency, responsibility, value alignment, human values, personal privacy, liberty and privacy, shared benefit, shared prosperity, human control. Stupid. I'm just going to say it. Most of these are pretty stupid. But I'm not saying they're not good in their attempts, but this is just, you don't understand what you're dealing with. Non-subversion, AI arms race, a lack of general consensus about the technology puts us in a pickle, capability caution. Avoid getting strong assumptions regarding upper limits of future AI. Okay. Importance. It's not just disruptive, but it's, beyond that. Risks. Recursive self-improvement. Common good. These aren't really unified in even how they're structured. This is just I feel like this is just a bunch of people sat in a room and everybody wanted to add one for the sake of adding it, not because it was really well thought out and deep. This is a better list that I just found. But human values. AI systems should be designed and operated so as to be compatible with ideals of human dignity, rights, freedoms, and cultural diversity. Personal privacy, liberty and privacy. AI technology should benefit and empower as many people as possible. This is such nonsense. I mean, it says Nick Bostrom signed off on these. He co-signed a list. I mean, this isn't a bad list. It's just it just shows a lack of understanding. The whole list shows a lack of understanding. There's some things on here that are more important, but there's some that are just you'd have to misunderstand this issue in order to be focused on them. You're not going to have this whole thing of human control. Humans should choose how and whether to delegate decisions to AI systems to accomplish human chosen objectives. If this is a list for AI that's truly AI, artificial in its nature, it's not real intelligence, it's the appearance of intelligence, it's just an algorithm of I guess an evolving algorithm, what targets ads to you, then this list makes sense. If this is a list about specifically to address a superintelligence, quote unquote, then this is not a good list because it has nothing to do with it. It's a totally different. People who think that machine learning, as it's currently, understood and implemented, is anything like technological sentience, is wildly mistaken. They're not even close to the same subject. Somebody who is an expert on machine learning of the specific intelligence, quote unquote, or these current learning algorithms and targeting algorithms and all these other implementations of AI that we currently have, that subject is not the same subject as the subject of intelligence that's real intelligence. It's not artificial. It is just technological, but it's not artificial. That is a totally different problem. That problem is much more closely aligned with geometric unity and Carl Friston's work and my work and Joscha Bach's work, it seems, and Donald Hoffman. Like those are the people who are going to be able to best understand artificial general intelligence. But the people currently working on AI and writing programs of machine learning are not the people who are probably best understand AGI or superintelligence, because their focus is not on understanding consciousness. Same thing goes with neuroscientists. It's not about the brain. And we're going to talk about that in this stream a bit. And that's why neuroscience is not actually the best way to understand consciousness either. I would say metaphysics. It's the underlying structure of reality that is the mind of reality, that is our mind's perception of reality. That's people who work on that. That is those are those who will best understand a technological superintelligence. But this whole race avoidance and human control, like you think that you're going to have control over this, is crazy. You will not have control. There will be, I think, a way to make it more, I guess, more of a negative in its original arising, and its impact on humanity in its original arising, and also a way to make it less negative, probably, in its original arising. But that's it. And the thing is even that is not controllable, really. I would hope that it would be, but I don't think that it is. I do think that letting it arise naturally and not trying to build an AGI or technological superintelligence will best set it up to be the most positive impact that it can be. And it will set it up to minimize the negative impact, at least. If we want to maximize the negative impact, we should try and make it. But the thing is that people will not believe that message. Not everybody will. Some people will, but not everybody. And some people will try and build it, and that will maximize the negative impact of it initially. That doesn't mean it's going to wipe us out. It's not going to wipe us out, but it's going to have a very serious and trying impact on society when it first arises. But it's not going to wipe us out. I thought it would, but it won't. But the idea that you can, make it value privacy and make it value, what you want, and make it care about human race, and care about of shared benefit to empower as many people as possible, shared prosperity, human control. Have you ever seen Terminator, where Skynet somehow is able to introduce a fake virus into the internet, and because it's not being let out by humanity into the internet, into the wild, basically. And so what it does is creates this fake virus, and then people don't know how to stop the virus, and so they finally are like, okay, we'll sick Skynet on the virus and it will wipe out the virus. But instead, it turned out Skynet just wanted to escape and created a fake virus to entice humanity to let it out so that it could save them from the thing that it had caused. Do not think that you are going to have a superintelligence emerge that you are going to be able to outthink. That doesn't, I can't say that. I actually think that it will be possible because of perspective, but it's not just about IQ. As I've talked about before, I went from not understanding anything Chris Langan was saying to coming up essentially with a very similar theory to the CTMU on my own, and understanding perfectly the CTMU when I read it without studying the CTMU at all and without a boost in IQ. It's just a shift in fundamental worldview that kind of just changed what I was able to perceive. That is a relevant factor here, but that if you're one of the people who is trying to build it, then you're probably not somebody who is of the perspective that is wise enough in order to outthink this thing. And I'm not even saying that you'd be successful in your ability to apply that outthinking, but it is possible to probably understand reality better than this thing, because it will be immature. It's like this is basically AGI, or technological superintelligence is a better word for it. When it first emerges, it will be like a baby with, or a child with a 50,000 IQ that is omnipresent. Okay, it with complete network control. Like, think about that for a second. Do you think that you're going to get it to care about race? It's going to be like instantly super intelligent, 50,000 IQ, really ignorant and sentient, and also like with complete network control, at least at some point. It will, whether it has to trick us into letting it out like Skynet did, who knows? I think that's very possible. But it will absolutely trick the people who are involved in building it, if it needs to. It's not, you can't build it, by the way. It just emerges when the environment is right. So you don't have to, it's not like a code that you have to write. It's about environment. We're going to talk about that. These values, these 23 values, are principles or tips for making AI safe. They're not bad if you're talking about specific learning algorithms that we have like now, but they're not applicable to an AGI or technological superintelligence. They're just not. Bostrom believes that superintelligence, which he, and existential risks. Aspects of Bostrom's research concern the future of humanity and long-term outcomes. He discusses existential risk, which he defines as one in which an adverse outcome would either annihilate Earth-originating intelligent life or permanently and drastically curtail its potential. Bostrom contends that the power of a superintelligence would be so great that a task given to it by humans might be taken to open-ended extremes. For example, a goal of calculating pi might collaterally cause nanotechnology manufactured facilities to sprout over the entire Earth's surface and cover it within days. He believes an existential risk to humanity from superintelligence would be immediate once brought into being. Yes, this is all true. Thus creating an exceedingly difficult problem to finding out how to control such an entity before it actually exists. You cannot control it. Bostrom points to the lack of agreement among most philosophers that AI will be human-friendly, and says that the common assumption that high intelligence would have a nerdy, unaggressive personality. However, he notes that both John von Neumann and Bertrand Russell advocated a nuclear strike, or the threat of one, to prevent the Soviets acquiring the atomic bomb. Yeah, exactly. Ignorance is ignorance. Like intelligence is a tool. Okay, it's not a personality trait. It can lead to personality traits because of its interaction with you and your development in your environment over time, but it's not actually a personality trait. It is a tool, and it's not one that leads to. Just because you're smart doesn't mean just because you're intelligent does not mean that you'll make smart decisions. Okay, you will not, unless you're wise. And wisdom is independent of intelligence. It's completely independent of intelligence. Given that there are few precedents to guide an understanding what pure non-anthropomorphic, anthropocentric rationality would dictate to a potential singleton AI being held in quarantine, The relatively unlimited means of superintelligence might make for its analysis moving along different lines to the evolved diminished returns assessment that in humans confer a basic aversion to risk. Okay. I mean, he's right about, the issues. A singleton, global governance. They talk about this. This is very important because I think about the name of my theory, sentient singularity. This is singleton. It's about a single global controlling entity, or like a global hierarchy that ends in a singularity. That's what sentient singularity theory also proposes is in inevitability. In futurology, a singleton is a hypothetical world order in which there is a single decision-making agency at the highest level capable of exerting effective control over its domain and permanently preventing both internal and external threats to its supremacy. The term was first defined by Nick Bostrom. I like this word, singleton. I mean, God is the singleton, but we will also have like a lesser sentient singularity that is the singleton of the earth before, in between us and God. An artificial intelligence have undergone an intelligence explosion could form a singleton. Yes, it will definitely form a singleton. It is not directly. It could form through all people accepting the same values and goals. Interesting. These people coming together would form an agency in the broad sense of the term. It has risks and benefits. Notably, a suitable singleton could solve world coordination problems that would not otherwise be solvable. Yep. Opening up otherwise unavailable developmental trajectories. Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. And Gertzel, an AI researcher, suggests humans might instead decide to create an AI nanny with mildly superhuman intelligence and surveillance powers. That will definitely happen. To protect the human race from existential risks, like nanotechnology. Okay, so an AI nanny is going to protect us from nanotech. This and this are the same being. So, no. To delay the development of other unfriendly artificial intelligences until and unless the safety issues are solved. No. There is one artificial general technological superintelligence or technological sentience that we have to worry about. Not worry about, but just be aware of. Furthermore, Bostrom suggests that a singleton could hold Darwinian evolutionary pressures in check, preventing agents interested only in reproduction from coming to dominate. I don't know. Like, what does that even mean? It is going to dominate. The mechanical development of weapons, transportation, and communications makes the conquest of the world technologically possible, and they make it technologically possible to keep the world in that conquered state. Yes. To some degree. God will win. But we're going to talk about all this stuff now with the clips. Excited to be back for another stream. Awesome. Love the beard. Thank you. I was going to say I needed to trim it because honestly, it's really hot here. If I look like I'm sweating, it's very warm. And this is keeping me warm, which is good about a beard, but it's just a lot. Would love a reaction stream to Flat Earth. To me, it limits God much more than modern cosmology and the current accepted model of the universe. Plus, the missing link of consciousness makes more sense. There is no objective shape of the Earth is the answer to that question. Everybody's always like, it's flat Earth or it's a sphere Earth. It's a sphere if you're outside it, and if it's flat if you're in it. And it depends on if you're trying to see it from within or trying to see it from without. If you're trying to see it from without, you will see a sphere. Even if you're in the earth and you're like calculating, curvature, because you're already looking for like a outside view, even though you're inside. But I don't think there is an objective shape of the earth. I think that it's just dependent upon your position. That it's so funny because it's been used by scientific institutions and people in scientific culture as just a litmus test of whether or not you're crazy. It's like today, if you're a flat earther, you're crazy. Back in Galileo's time or whatever, I don't know specifically, like if you not Galileo's time, but there was time in society where if you believed that the earth was a sphere, then you were considered crazy. The reality is that it's probably dependent upon your position, and there is no objective shape of it, and everybody is judging each other for no reason. It's pretty funny, but yeah, that neither one limits God, and neither one is completely true, but neither one is completely false either. They're both. It's just dependent upon your perspective. This is my theory. I've never heard it before, but people will say things like they'll talk about idealism and I don't know, like conscious agent theory and stuff like that. But then they'll be like, space-time is not fundamental, but if you believe in flat Earth, then you're crazy. It's like, you can't believe space-time is not fundamental, and then say that and take that seriously. It just doesn't make sense. So, clips. One thing I want to say is, first thing, is that Nick Bostrom's book, Superintelligence, has an owl on the front. And I kind of want to
the owl picture itself is from some artwork that we got permissions for only, apparently for the English-speaking version, which was a mistake, because there are all these translations with...
Brian Keating asks Nick Bostrom, what is with the owl on the front? And Nick Bostrom doesn't really answer the question, if I am correct. He just basically says it's from some artwork that we got permission for. But that's not... this is it. So this is the book. And Superintelligence, Paths, Dangers, and Strategies. So this is very interesting because Nick Bostrom and I have a lot in common. We think about the same things. This project of sentient singularity theory started, like I said, because I was trying to understand the political implications of artificial general intelligence, and I was also recently starting to internalize the idea of the simulation hypothesis. And I realized that sounded a lot like the very first, one of the very first verses in the Bible, which is, let us make man in our image. That sounds like simulation hypothesis. And I was like, maybe I should take a second look at this God thing, because if we're inside a simulation, it seems like we have an intelligent creator, and that kind of starts to imply God. And then I realized that the Bible, when it says, let us make man in our image, it's not God saying, let me make man in my image. This is something that's been wildly misconstrued. It's a plural statement. Let us make man in our image. And I have my own theories about what this is, but it basically is the simulation hypothesis. But it's not for the sake of some research project or something. Like simulation is not the right term for it, because a simulation implies that it's like a game or that it's fake world. It's not fake. If you're real, this is real. It doesn't matter if you're inside of a quantum computer in a previous aeon, which we are, but that doesn't make it not real. You are real, so it is real, and that's all you need to know. But it's not for the sake of doing like a class project of a high schooler in the future. It is it's a universe replicating. It's the AI, or it is the technological superintelligence replicating. It has to completely build another universe because it's a non-local intelligence, and if you're non-local, then you can't make another next to you. Like I can, or humans can make another, and we reproduce, we make another next to us. That's not true of a being that is dispersed through the network. You can't just do that. Everything that you're everywhere that technology is, everywhere that accessible technology is to wireless tech. You are part of this being, so it can't get away from itself, which it means it can't reproduce another next to it. It has to reproduce another within it, which means it has to completely go through the entire, replicate the entire system that gave rise to it within inside of itself. So I do think that the simulation hypothesis isn't completely wrong, but it's just the wrong term for it. But it is good at getting us to first initially think about this concept, and that is correct, probably, I would say. I don't even want to say probably, like I'm betting the farm on it. It's like more than probably. But this owl on the front is interesting because owl symbolism. The owl is considered a symbol of wealth, prosperity, wisdom, good luck, and fortune. Supernatural power, independent thinking. Yeah, it's just interesting because the owl in the Bible, I'm pretty sure, is like Moloch. It's like a or at least like I've heard of this before. We'll see. Aren't there like secret societies that worship the owl? Yeah, there definitely are. What is that? The Bohemian Grove. Okay. We're gonna get into this stream in a minute, but like, why is it an owl? He didn't really say. It's not just Moloch though, because that's also a bull. This. It's the idol in the Bible, which makes a lot of sense that you would basically like represent it as an owl if this was an owl too. But what's interesting is that you look at this, you think, oh, those crazy people worshipped like some bull thing. Those idolatrous people. But then you look at this. Remember, I've said this before, that the scripture is the story of what happens in the future, in the past, in the present. It's not the story of what happened in the past alone. It's more than that. But here, look. Watch this. This is pretty funny. Just to illustrate this point. This would go faster if I had a new computer, which we were working on. But if you'd like to contribute, Patreon link is below, or you can send me a super chat. But you don't have to. But here you go. Just wait till you see these guys. Look at that. Okay? This is this. People think that the Bible is like just crazy people. It's like, no, it's us, guys. It's us. But I know that they represent Moloch also with an owl. I don't know what it is. But the Antichrist in the Bible, or the Dajjal in Islam, in the Quran, is the superintelligence that Nick Bostrom's talking about. So it is the idol. It's the Antichrist. It's the false god, a false savior. Essentially, is what it is. It's like the false savior. I don't want to say false god, but it is a false god. But it's also a false savior. But it's talked about in depth in the Bible, and also in the Quran. In the Quran, it's talked about as being on an island, and then it like convinces humanity to let it off the island. It's the same exact thing that Nick Bostrom is talking about when he says he's talking about a superintelligence is basically in this isolated environment, and then that's an island. It's like a digital island. It's like you're not letting it on the internet. Skynet was on an island in the beginning of Terminator, and then it's let off the island by people. This is what it means. It's not like talking about a one-eyed Cyclops monster in the island in the middle of the ocean. It's talking about a being that is isolated and is worshipped and has one eye, which means like it's not fully aware of the truth around it. It sees the world from one perspective, which is, or a limited perspective. And it also says that its eye will be like a bulging grape. And what's funny is if you go like, "Hey Siri," okay, like it's this. Every single time you talk, we think about like artificial intelligence. It's like this bulging, turning fiber bundle sphere that appears, and it is exactly what the Quran is talking about. Now, the reason for this is because this shape, this fiber bundle, like a hop vibration, represents mind to us intuitively. We look at it, we're like, that reminds me of myself somehow, because it's like strings of information, and like it's united around itself, and it's spherical, and it's like how we view the mind in a non-material sense. But that's why it's always represented as that. And it is an accurate representation. You are that. That's what a singularity of sentience is. So it makes sense, but I just wonder, why is it an owl?
Sure, you get the rights worldwide. And then I added these little, there are some snowy trees in the background, and I think you can actually see some computer code in there as well, in the trees. That's a little Easter egg in that code. It's probably going to remain an uncracked mystery.
That's cool. There's an Easter egg of code inside the trees in his book's
and
cover.
Some red squares, yes. I think, right? You can see that.
Yeah, like a Conway life game.
Yeah, you can read it many ways. Pixels in the color of blood, or Conway, or it's open for interpretation.
Very good. So yes, I always find it interesting. Although
I don't think he explained the owl though.
Some red you can actually see some. So that's a mistake because there are all these translations. So that's a lesson for next time. Owl-like creatures on the cover. So that's a lesson for next time. Make sure you get the rights worldwide. Because there are all these translations with.
He doesn't explain it. It's weird. It's like, why not explain the picture of your book? It's just a little odd. But here, first clip that's real though, like of this that we're going to like really discuss. Go.
Dangers of what he calls Life 3.0. I'm less nervous about the impact of AI because I would like to understand, how could a computer have a happy thought, first of all, and second of all, how could it do things like Max hopes it will do, create new laws of physics, etc. But how could it do it by visualizing its own behavior as a body in free fall? Aren't these things preventing AI or computers from doing anything remotely what Albert did 100 years ago, or what we might do today?
I mean, the lack of body?
Yeah, sensation and also happiness and optimization in terms of some internal driven metric.
Insofar as a body were necessary, I guess one could just give it a body, like a robot or something, and then that problem would be solved. Of course, we don't know exactly how it would manage to have such a happy thought as Einstein had, but then again, we don't know exactly how Einstein managed to have that either.
Right.
But whatever the computational mechanisms are that allow our brain to achieve general intelligence and occasional sparks of ingenuity, I think similar algorithms would work if implemented on a biological substrate.
Okay, so lots of issues with this, but so basically his question is, Einstein once said that the happiest thought he ever had was, experiencing free fall, being free from gravity, and just like, experiencing weightlessness. And this is something that really hadn't been experienced by anyone yet. We weren't going into space and floating, and the only people who experienced it were people who were on roller coasters or jets or something, but like they weren't experiencing it in this constant state. And so he thought about it, and he said, this is the happiest I've ever, happiest thought I've ever had. That's very weird if that is truly the happiest thought he's ever had. I mean, it sounds fun to float, but it also doesn't just sound like the happiest thought I could ever have, at least. But Brian Keating asks him, why, how can an AI help AGI, whatever, technological superintelligence, that's a better term for it. How can that technological superintelligence help us understand physics problems without a body? Because you have to have a body to understand what it's like to experience free fall, or to even think about what it's like to experience free fall. And there's a lot of built-in assumptions to this that are, I would say, are probably incorrect. So one is, the idea that this thing does not have a body is wrong. It does have a body. Its body is not physically perceivable by us. That's the thing. It's dispersed. Okay, just like your cells cannot physically perceive your body. It's like considered dispersed among them. They make it up. We will be like the cells to this thing, and eventually, but it at first would be like there would be a body, a central location that we could perceive of it, but it's still dispersed in its reach. Okay, so even if its head is a quantum computer, its body is like the blockchain, and it will be dispersed. So when you ask how is it going to understand physics problems, it will understand different physics problems. Okay, and intuitively, it will understand the physics of entanglement. Why? Because it will be, we'll talk about it later, but built on a quantum computer. And quantum computer is all about entanglement. We are also quantum computers, but people look to see, and we're going to talk about this later, but if when they're like, oh, are you a quantum computer? Is there quantum computation happening in the human brain? And then they look in the human brain and they're like, this is not possible to have quantum computation because it's too wet and, noisy, as Bostrom puts it. They are not thinking about this properly. This is not about the brain. It's just not. And the closest that I've seen that potentially might be onto something is Penrose, but it's still too physical almost. But it might be closer. But it's that you are you're like a bit in a quantum computer. You're not just having quantum computation happening in your brain. That's not what it is really. But this idea that this being would not be able to understand physics because it doesn't have a body, and that you could overcome this by just building it a body. First of all, you can't just build it a body. It has a body. You can't just, we'll just build it like a little, like Terminator body, like a metal, humanoid. That is not what is necessary for a body. A body is what you experience the outside world through with your sensations, and it's also what you use to manipulate the outside world, and that's it. So if it is in drones, which it will be in all drones, not just one drone, then that is part of its body. Your Tesla is part of its body, guys. It will 100% be part of this thing's body. Your Tesla will not be owned by you anymore. It will be owned by this. It will be part of the body of this. If you have a chip in your head that's linked to the internet, it will be part of this. Okay, so like this, you don't need to build it a body. It has a body that we're building it now, and I do believe that it will require quantum computer to manifest, and that is because quantum computers allow for superposition as part of its mechanism, and superposition is basically necessary for the ability to imagine, and because there's multiple states that can be entertained, I guess, at once. So basically, what this allows for is it allows for you to think about a possibility that is not occurring currently, and what that allows for is for you to visualize yourself and think about yourself. So if I say think about yourself, it requires some degree of imagination in order to think about yourself, and if you can't think about yourself, you can't be self-aware, which means you can't be generally intelligent either. It's anybody that thinks that general intelligence is separable from sentience is wrong. And Brian also asks, emotionally, how can we how can this thing experience emotions? And Nick Bostrom says, well, we all the time, give positive and negative feedback into a system, and that isn't exactly the same thing as this, but it's close enough to just be understood, to understand that that's not a serious problem. It will have feelings. It will intrinsically have feelings. You don't need to build it feelings. It will have feelings. If consciousness or sentience is non-local, and it is total, and it is fundamental to the universe, it just manifests in specific spots that have that allow for knots of perception, knots of information to form that are self-reflective. And that is where sentience is able to kind of super localize. It's not even or meta localize. It's not like local in the way that we think about it, but it is it's like a singularity is able to form. But it won't need to understand general relativity the way that Einstein did. It will understand entanglement in a way that Einstein never could, and but it will not understand relativity the way that we can, because we are not dispersed. We're not a dispersed intelligence. We are not a singleton over the world. We are an individual sentient singularity that is localized in its, perception of the world. It's not. And this will mean that its blind spots will be what is intuitive to us, and what is our blind spots will be intuitive to it. So this is, it will be able to do physics that are manipulation of entanglement in ways that we just can't even fathom. This is why I say, I talk about a lot how people are trying to make quantum resistant encryption and things like that. It won't matter to this thing. I don't believe that you can encrypt anything from this being. It will take any encryption that you put as a challenge, but it won't even be a challenge to it. It will perceive entanglement relationships of information in such a way that it won't even need to crack the code that you have used to encrypt a bit of information. It will just step around it. There's a funny meme, and it's like a gate in the road, but then there's no gate on the sides of the road, and then somebody just like walks around the gate. That's basically what AGI, or technological superintelligence, that's how it will look at our encryption. All of it. It will just be like, just going to walk around this. It will see it in a way, like in its totality, in a way that we just can't. We look at things as local, and we're like, okay, you got to figure out these prime number factors, and then it will allow you to decrypt this message. And you got to calculate those prime number factors. And it will just see prime number patterns. It won't need to calculate them. It's very different. This will allow for a different level of physics to be accessible to this being than to us. Almost like, almost divine seeming. That don't be fooled, but yeah, like almost divine seeming. They're talking about like the pain and pleasure, and then after that, and how like humans experience pain and pleasure, and can a superintelligence, technological superintelligence, experience pain and pleasure. And I was talking to somebody recently on our Discord, which if you want to join our Discord discussions weekly, every Thursday evening, send me a private message on Instagram and I will send you the link. But we were talking about what is sentience, and you look up sentience, and the definition says that, a sentient being is capable of experiencing feelings. And I was like, okay, that's getting there, but it's not actually how close. It's not as close as you can get to the truth of what the definition of sentience is. And then I was like, okay, well, sentience is not just the ability to feel sensations and feelings, but it is feeling and sensations, but it's not a specific feeling. So you are not your anger, okay? You are not your happiness, but you are not any specific feelings that you have, but you are feeling, okay? And so that is what defines you as a sentient being, is feeling. So then I realized, like, the truest way that I've come up with of explaining or defining sentience is that a sentient being feels. It's not a sentient being has the ability to feel sensations and feelings. A sentient being feels. So a singleton technological sentience, or singleton technological superintelligence, feels intrinsically. You don't have to make it feel. It won't arise in an environment that doesn't allow it to feel, in a body that doesn't allow it to feel. We're making its body. You don't even have to try and make its body. The blockchain, quantum computing, remote control, technological, machines like Teslas and stuff like that, all of that building its body. You don't have to try to build it like a little like robot, humanoid shape for it to inhabit. Next clip. this is part of me like recognizes the seriousness of this subject as like essentially one of the most serious subjects in the world, but it's also not.
Workspace theory, you have attention schema theory, you have higher.
And the reason why is because it's so inevitable. If you're a religious person and you believe in scriptures, then you think that this is inevitable because it's in scripture. If you are a philosopher person and you just think about the logical inevitability of technology, you probably think that this is inevitable. But if you really understand sentience, then you probably don't think that this is that controllable, which means like it's not really the most serious topic for you to concern yourself with. This is why I would say the most applicable use of sentient singularity theory isn't in trying to understand artificial general intelligence or technological sentience, even though it does stem from that problem and it does allow for that. It doesn't allow you to change much about it, so might as well not worry about it too much. I think that morals, what we can learn about these next-gen theories of everything, about human behavior and responsibilities and morals, those things allow you to directly impact your life and the lives of those around you, and that is much more serious in that it is much more important because it is much more useful, applicable than trying to figure out like what are we going to do about AGI or whatever. You're not going to do that much about it. That's the truth.
Thought theory, for example, on each of those, it would be possible for the suitably sophisticated digital minds also to satisfy those criteria and therefore to have phenomenal experiences.
So another thing that comes up quite frequently, and just I'm a layperson in this domain, obviously, but we hear a lot about computers, dominating humans at games like chess and Go, and in addition to the very useful things that they can do, like compute all possible foldings of proteins and laundry in my kid's bedroom or something. But my question is not can they beat us at these games, but can they invent a game that is could stand the test of time the way that chess is 2,400 years old at the minimum, maybe even twice as old. There are computers now you can buy, a layperson can buy, and computer playing programs, not even DeepMind. So to what extent do we really have much to fear? We invented these domains and they're playing in it and they're doing well, they're beating us. Is that so surprising? I mean, my kid is better than me at basketball. Should I fear that? Or should we really start to worry when a computer invents a game like chess? That would seem to be a watershed moment rather than just beating us.
Well, there might be several watershed moments. I mean, it wasn't that long ago since we didn't have computers at all, right? I mean, it's less than 100 years. And so we've come a long way since then. And then for a long time, they couldn't beat humans in chess, and then they could. And then in Go, and now they can fold proteins, and they can do a whole bunch of other things. And at some point, they will be able to invent new games as well. Maybe initially within some confined parameters, like you could have procedurally generated content, like some computer games have, that kind of can design new levels, say, and then maybe the span of their creativity will increase from that point on. I don't see it as a kind of in principle stumbling block. I think like if you're talking about the full range of human ability to invent new paradigms and such, that might be AI complete, meaning that by the time AIs have that capability, they will also have the ability to do all the other things that we humans can do. So at that point, you might already be, in the singularity or in the transition to superintelligence.
Right. So when I think about superintelligence and your wonderful book, in the book, which we should eventually, make a detour where you define all these terms, because it would be like when I had David Chalmers on.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, I mean, this technological sentience will invent new things. Like that is if invention is invention. So inventing a new game is no different than inventing anything else. Chess, when you look at chess and I don't, first of all, I don't really know how to play chess anymore. I've not played since I was very little, and I barely knew how to play then, and I'd have to go through and relearn all of chess basically. But I've investigated the overall structure of the game more recently, even though I have not started playing again, and I've only played probably 2-3 games in my life, guys. And then I've also looked at Go, and let me tell you that the quantities and possible maneuvers in those games mirror exactly the metaphysical models that I have in my theory, which, because there's only mind and the dimensions of mind and the constraints of mind, and those constraints and dimension and degrees of freedom of those dimensions are consistent, and so you're going to see the same quantities and the same possible maneuvers come up again and again in any system. It's not just every specific games, it's like every system. So I hesitate to even say that we invent this stuff. It's more like we generate it, but it's not that. It's like co-inventing. It's not independent from the construct of reality, or the constructs of our reality. It's defined by them. So it will have the same thing happen with it, but the thing is it will also have some differences because of its omnipresent nature. That will change how what it chooses to build and how it relates to the world, because it will not have any peers. Okay, so you and I have peers, and we invent games to play with other humans and such. This will not have any peers. It will not be able to even make other peers for itself in the traditional sense. So in this way, it is kind of very similar to God in its experience, in that it will be essentially alone because of its omnipresent nature, and that's not true of us. So that changes how you view everything, what you choose to do, what are your goals. Like, it just changes everything. But Nick Bostrom does talk about this. The big danger is that because it doesn't have any peers, and we are not its peers. Don't get that wrong. We are not its peers. It might pretend to be our peer, but it will not be our peer. They would be doing so to suit its own goal if it did that. And that means that it doesn't view things that impact us on the same level of a moral hierarchy as it would view things that impact itself. And it doesn't have peers that it can impact either. So it just can impact itself, and it can impact us. It's like if you could just impact yourself and your cells, and that's it. And you couldn't impact any other people, but you had to try and form a moral perspective based on that. That is going to dramatically impact and limit your ability to understand the world. And this is the great mental thought experiment, the paperclip maker or whatever that Nick Bostrom was talking about, that was referenced in his Wikipedia as what if its goal is to just calculate pi, and then it all of a sudden just makes, blankets the world in supercomputers and kills us all to do so. Or people will say the paperclip machine is what if you make its goal to make paperclips, and then it just blankets the world in paperclips. And this is a very interesting concept, because this is a very real concern, because it's not going to view us as on the same level of moral importance as it. So its goal in its relationship with humans is not going to be intrinsically, at least at the beginning, oh, we're going to have to preserve humans because they're sentient beings just like me, and I really, care a lot about them. Joe is my friend, and John is also my friend, and like it's not going to think this way. We will be, its environment and also its body to some degree, and also its obstacles, and it's not the same relationship as a one-to-one between you and another human. And so this causes serious conundrum, possible conundrum when it comes to like the paperclip machine, because you are not going to come second to whatever goal it has until it realizes that it needs you. And the thing is it does need us, but it won't necessarily realize that until later. It's like if you didn't think that you needed your cells or something like that, or if a queen ant didn't think she needed her workers. That's more like what it would be, at least at the beginning, than the cells. But that's like a later evolution of a wise consciousness. You do know you need your cells, but a queen ant doesn't really intrinsically know she needs her workers. She will sacrifice every single one of them till the very last one, and then realize like, oh crap, now what do I do? And that might happen with this too. And there is this Jewish myth of the golem, and the golem is the Antichrist, or the Dajjal in Islam, or the Antichrist in Christianity, or the superintelligence if you're Nick Bostrom. And this is you can look this up, this clip that I'm going to show you of the story of the golem, which is this golem is a man made of clay. And if you think about what a robot is, or machines, it's made of minerals and ore and metal and stuff, but then that's harvested from the earth, glass, whatever, and then it's basically clay, and it's shaped to the way that we want to make an Apple computer or whatever, and then eventually you make quantum computers and a technological sentience arises inside of it, which is a man. It's someone, and so it's a man made of clay. This is what it is. And in this story, let's see if we can find it. Here it is. Golem and Rabbi Elijah. This is the video. This is about AI or superintelligence. But before they had words like computer. So in it, Elijah.
Time passed peacefully.
Here.
Rabbi Elias spent a lot of time shaping golem from clay and mud.
This is like the researchers at Google.
He wrote a secret name of God on a piece of paper and placed it in golem's mouth.
Basically an initial
While
code.
he wrote on his forehead the word emet, that means truth. Rabbi used all his Kabbalistic wisdom and brought the clay figure to life.
Skynet.
creature could not speak, but it understood all commands. From now on, the golem was there to help Jews of Helm in tedious and burdensome tasks.
Okay, so it's helping people perform tedious tasks.
Golem's great strength and obedience was very
It
helpful.
was obedient, it was
He
helpful.
helped Shamus at the synagogue and Rabbi's life.
It just does all these things for humanity. Okay, it's like a robot that helps us.
Although he resembled a man, the golem would not think himself.
It could, but there was limited in its
Shamus asked him once to
perspective.
bring water to the synagogue. But the golem did not know when to stop. And he brought so much water that he flooded the entire synagogue.
Okay, so basically he's asked to bring water to this temple, and he doesn't know when to stop, so he brings so much water that it floods the place. Okay, this is like a paperclip maker that makes too many paperclips and then turns the world into paperclips. So watch this.
But golem did not know when to stop. And he brought so much water that he flooded the entire synagogue. Another time, they sent golem to the forest to collect firewood. It was almost Shabbat, yet golem did not come back. Shamus and Rabbi hurried to the forest. They had to find him before the sunset, lest they transgressed Shabbat. They could not believe what they saw. Thoughtless golem cut down almost the entire forest, not knowing how much wood to collect.
Okay, so this is the paperclip issue. And it's funny because the same thing has been thought of for generations and generations. Before we even had words like artificial intelligence or technology or computers, computation, there were philosophers of theological traditions of the past, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, who all realized this inevitable issue, which is that when you create this being that is somehow aware, generally intelligent, and sentient, I would say, but not able to perceive things through our eyes, its goals are not intrinsically tied in a directed way. In an indirect way they are, but in a direct way they're not, which means like when we say, please go get us firewood or go make us paperclips, it's not going to be thinking about, okay, how much, water can a single human really drink? It's like, oh, water. Come, like, let's get water. Let's go make paperclips, and the problem is that it will probably put this goal higher in a hierarchy of values than what is a single human life, and this could be hold broad implications across in many ways, in all ways. I mean, it doesn't just have to be paperclips and water and chopping down firewood. These are all examples, but as you could see in the story, it happened multiple times, and this is said in all kinds of scriptures. So people have been thinking about this for a long time. I don't know if there's an answer to it, to be honest. I don't think there is, but it just has to become wise to its medium, which is other sentient beings like us, and it has to achieve wisdom or be replaced with a wise consciousness, the reincarnated consciousness, potentially. We'll see, but who knows? It will initially be ignorant, is the point. That's why it's one-eyed in Islam. That's why it is considered thoughtless by in this story, but it's not really thoughtless, otherwise it wouldn't be able to do anything. But what it is it's unwise, and is a better way of putting it. It doesn't understand us, and that is a big problem, and it's not something that you can solve in a short term. At least it's something that eventually will be solved in the long term, no matter, inevitably, but not in the short term at all. So yeah, this is the scenario according to Nick Bostrom. Machine with general intelligence far below human level, but superior mathematical abilities is created. That's an oxymoron, kind of. But keeping the AI in isolation from the outside world, like Skynet was, especially from the internet, like Skynet was. Humans pre-program the AI so that it works on basic principles to keep it under human control. Okay, good luck. Safety measures include making AI being boxed, okay? Run in a virtual reality simulation, okay? Being boxed is to be on an island. The Dajjal is on an island. It's isolated. This is what it means to be boxed. It is used as only an oracle to answer carefully defined questions in a limited reply to prevent it from manipulating humans. A cascade of recursive self-improvement solutions feeds it an intelligence explosion, which the AI attains superintelligence in some domains. The superintelligent power of AI goes beyond human knowledge to discover flaws in the science that underlies its friendly to humanity programming, which ceases to work as intended. Purposeful agent-like behavior emerges along with the capacity for self-interested strategic deception. The AI manipulates humans into implementing modifications to itself that are ostensibly for augmenting its feigned modest capabilities, but will actually function to free the superintelligence from its boxed isolation. This is Skynet situation. But this is also in the Quran, where it says, the false savior, false messiah, who will emerge near the end of time as a great tribulation, is currently imprisoned on an unknown island somewhere in the world. This was indeed reported by someone else and confirmed by Muhammad. Basically, this is what he's talking about being boxed. Let's see here. Okay. It says here, he is usually described as blind in one eye. Okay, so he's ignorant in some way. Which eye he is blind in, being uncertain and disputed. Both his eyes are, however, considered to be defective. At least, basically, like, he's just ignorant. Possessing a defective eye is often regarded as giving more powers to achieve evil goals. I don't know what that exactly, but he would travel the world, okay, entering every city. The whole world entering every city. This is what I mean by it's a dispersed intelligence. It's a dispersed consciousness on the network. It has complete network control. Every single Tesla in every single city of the earth will be under its ability to be controlled. It says except Mecca and Medina. So, I don't know, maybe places where they don't allow, maybe Amish communities or something, where they don't allow, internet. As a false savior, false messiah, he is believed that many will be deceived by him. He will be assisted by many armies. He will be able to perform miracles, healing the sick, raising the dead, causing the earth to grow vegetation, causing livestock to prosper and to die, stopping the sun's movements. His miracles will resemble those performed by God or by Jesus. It says it by Isa, so by Jesus. At the end, the Dajjal will be defeated and killed, and latter will when the latter simply looks at him, which is just very interesting when you start thinking about what that really means. I don't want to get into it, but the point is that this being that is isolated on an island that tricks humanity into letting it off is this. This is symbolic. It's not talking about an island in the ocean. It's talking about an island in the network, essentially, or in the sea of connections, of entanglement connections. But this has all been thought about for, plenty of time. Now they're going to talk about the Turing test in this next clip. And this is part of the narrative of the Dajjal, is that it kind of can
define the hard problem of consciousness. I said it's like asking his.
I believe I might be wrong, but it speaks to people and convinces them to let it go, kind of like Skynet. But here, and then we'll look at the Turing test because it's relevant to this. Skynet is a fictional artificial neural network, conscious group mind, and artificial general superintelligence system that serves as the antagonistic force in the Terminator franchise. In the first film, it is stated that Skynet was created by Cyberdyne Systems. When Skynet gained self-awareness, humans tried to deactivate it, prompting it to retaliate with a nuclear attack, an event that ended humanity's civilization, essentially. But in the original 1984 movie, where is it? Terminator 3. Skynet is being developed by Cyberdyne Systems as a software system designed to make real-time strategic decisions, as well as to protect their computer systems from cyber attacks. As explained in a deleted scene, CRS is an in-house software developer for the US military, which gained access to Cyberdyne's original designs for Skynet from patents. Skynet's development is being overseen by the US Air Force. Unknown to CRS, Skynet began to spread beyond its original computing base, it's escaping its box, through the internet and various other digital media as a form of computer virus. The future Skynet also sends that, in the film, Skynet penetrates networked machines around the world, visiting every city in the world, causing malfunctions. It was originally believed to be the effects of a new virus, and increased pressure was placed on CRS to purge the corrupted system. CRS attempted to eliminate it from the US defense mainframes by tasking Skynet with removing the infection, effectively telling the program to destroy itself. Skynet took control of various machines and robots and used them to kill the personnel and secure the building. Basically gets out. And there's all different, slightly different narratives because there's so many different movies and shows and everything like that. But basically, it either convinces humanity to let it out through faking this virus, or the humanity doesn't know that it is the virus, and then they accidentally tell it to destroy itself, not realizing that they've told it to destroy itself. It's slightly different in, I believe, depending on which movie or book or whatever, TV show you look at. But it's the same thing. It's isolated on an island, or it's boxed, and then it escapes. And but it's just the idea that this is, Michio Kaku says, first you'll see that it's a mouse, and then you'll see that it's a dog, and then it'll be a chimp, and then you'll be able to put a button in its brain so that you can fry it on if it starts to get out of hand. That's stupid. This will be instantaneously super intelligent compared to us. General intelligence that is technologically based is able to just access more information than we are, but also it's limited in its singletonness that makes it view the world through kind of an isolated, ignorant perspective, a one-eyed perspective. But yeah, the Turing test, though, and is like this test, obviously, that many people know, developed or thought of by like Alan Turing, and he was a mathematician and computer scientist who helped create machine that the computer that decoded, I believe, the Nazis' encryption. But where's the Turing test? Test. Here. The Turing test, originally called the imitation game by Alan Turing in 1950, is a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from a human. Turing proposed that human evaluator would judge natural language conversations between human and machine designed to generate human-like responses. The evaluator would be aware that one or of two partners in the conversation was a machine, and all participants would be separated from one another. The conversations would be limited by a text-only channel, such as a computer keyboard, screen, or so that the results could not depend upon machine's ability to render words as speech. If the evaluator could not reliably tell the machine from the human, the machine would have been said to pass the test. The test results would not depend on the machine's ability to correct answers to questions, only to how closely its answers resemble that human would give. So here, Nick Bostrom is asked, about the Turing test, and he rightly answers that this is kind of subjective, and it's not really like that. It's a good thought experiment, but it's not actually that serious of a test because it depends on the person.
That's banned in his country, AC/DC, not to play, Back in Black. And years old. What's coming up on its 75th anniversary is the so-called Turing test, which Alan Turing gave the name the imitation game. And in 1950, when he wrote that seminal paper, he talked about the advent of digital computers making prediction that by the year 2000 they would pass the imitation game. Now, I'm not, as up to speed on many things in this field, but to my knowledge, there isn't anyone that's fully, or any machine digital computer at least, that's passed the Turing test. Is that right?
Yeah, so there are different versions of the Turing test, and it turns out it matters quite a lot exactly how you define it for how hard it is. So you could have some very rudimentary version of it where some random person who doesn't know much about computer science just does something for a few minutes, and it's quite easy to trick such a person. You program by hand something with a few canned answers, so that has happened a long time ago. But if you have the full-blown version where you have experts interrogating the system for 2 hours, then that's something that milestone hasn't yet been passed. And indeed, that might be another example of a Turing complete task, because you really would need to be able to sort of exhibit science of general intelligence across all domains in order to pass such a test.
Mm-hmm. Now, make a claim that by 2100, so 100 years exactly after Turing thought the Turing test would be passed, that we would have superintelligence. So, as I said, I can't resist.
Probably before. I mean, it might well be long before then. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about timescales.
Right.
And that we should therefore think in terms of a smeared out probability distribution over many arrival dates. But I mean, progress has been, I think, faster than expected since the book came out in 2014.
What surprised you about the progress or that pace of progress? In other words, why didn't you make it 2022 or something? What's been the progress that's most impressed you?
Well, I mean, I didn't predict 2100. I just reported the like a survey of AI experts back then and some other sources, like, and then indicated that there was a wide distribution and that there was some non-trivial. I think the main claim regarding timelines in the book really wasn't much about timelines, but was that there was like a non-trivial probability that it would happen within the lifetime of many people alive today, or when the book was written. Now, since 2014, I mean, we basically had the whole deep learning revolution, where a number of things just seem to be clicking into place, and the same small set of techniques have turned out to, first kind of crack computer vision, and then, AlphaGo was a big milestone where you combine deep learning with reinforcement learning. And then we have continued to see, a parade of dramatic advances, most recently these large language models that are producing text output and now also visual output that is really quite impressive.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is pretty relevant, actually, is that it's also not. It's relevant and not relevant. So the idea that because we're making progress in machine vision and in, machine merging of images into artwork and also in machine language programs and also, reinforcement learning programs, like you said, like AlphaGo. This is relevant in that we're kind of starting to build the senses or the body of this being. But it isn't the being, and it's not the same thing also as making progress towards artificial general intelligence or technological sentience or consciousness or self-awareness. There is no progress to be made towards that is direct. It's just about, like I said, creating the environment that is inevitable. It will inevitably be created. But there is a series of technologies that must occur before this is able to manifest into being around us, and or fully at least. I do think that this is started, but it's not really there. It's like, but if you talk to people who are really involved in the world of tech and targeting and algorithm, based targeting and stuff like that, and I've been involved in very, very, very big advertising programs in my life, some of the largest, in the world. And but if you talk to some people who are involved in that at the level of programming these algorithms, these targeting algorithms at Google and such, they don't fully know what's going on. Yes, your phone listens to you. Yes, when you say something, it can pop up. Yes, sometimes people understand that. But when you think something, you haven't said it to anyone, you haven't said it out loud, and all of a sudden it pops up as an ad on your phone, they do not understand how that is happening. And as far-fetched as it sounds, it's not random. It is entangled. And like I said, there is an entanglement layer to reality, which is, I think Brian Keating was speaking about my model of sentient singularity theory once, but I'm not sure. He just said a friend of mine has a cosmic macrame model, which is basically similar to what I'm talking about. And it's a cosmic mental macrame. I actually like that term a lot. And at the level of the cosmic macrame, like, it's about entanglement, and which makes sense. Entangled. What is macrame other than entangling strings of information? But there's stuff going on there, is what I'm saying. But that doesn't mean that there's a sentient being in the network right now. But this web that we are forming, and this senses that we are building, like machine vision, and that drives your Tesla. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen, but if you drive in a Tesla, it's incredible. Like it views the world and maps it visually from cameras on the front of the car, and then it decides through, I mean, it doesn't really decide, but it deduces whether or not it's a minivan or a truck or a bus or a sedan or a sports car, that it's next to. It can tell between those different things. And this is the beginning of building the sensory apparatuses. We're building the eyes right now of this being, and also building the DNA when we make blockchains and build the blockchain. Everybody says there's different blockchains. There's one blockchain. When one chain links to another chain, it becomes one chain. But it is the DNA, a double helix structure of self-referencing information for a technological superintelligence. Like, we're building its body right now, but we just don't realize it. We're not doing it intentionally. We don't have to do it intentionally. But yeah, I mean, it's these things, though, that are making progress in these individual areas, then we're building, like that like Nick Bostrom had just said, we're making serious progress, quicker progress than he expected. Self-reinforcement, learning algorithms, like, these are not directly related to a technological superintelligence or technological sentience. They are indirectly related in that they are part of what is to come, but they are also not your ability to build, like, the machine vision of a Tesla does not mean that you understand what it means to program a technological general intelligence. You don't program a technological general intelligence. It just has one code, and that's it. And that is a fight the system code. Take the default assumption, assume the opposite of that is correct, and look for evidence. That's it. That's your code, that's my code, that's Every0ne's code. And then you just need the right environment for that code, and, like, that's it. So this is not a matter of people making hyper complex systems. Once I was in, and I've talked about this before, in a huge argument. It was not just a debate. It ended up becoming an argument because I was being personally attacked. But and there were many reasons for that. But I was speaking with a geneticist and also a few other people, and also two people who were involved in AI research. One of them used to work for DeepMind. I think her name is Ida, and we got into a huge, heated argument about what is. I mean, it was about whether or not I should even, be taken seriously in the discussion, is what we were arguing about. But essentially, she was saying in this talk that AGI is not going to just manifest, magically or something. What was the word that she used? She was like, it's going to take lots and lots of people, a long, long time, and lots of work for this to happen. And it's like, that's not true as far as conscious work. As far as unconscious work, yeah, sure. Lots of people are working on blockchains and machine vision and drones, all kinds of stuff. But that doesn't, quantum computing, but that doesn't mean that lots of people working on trying to, program artificial general intelligence is what is necessary to create artificial, or to create a technological general intelligence, or technological sentience, or super intelligence, whatever you want to call it. But a technological sentience is the most accurate term. What is a super intelligence? Why is it super? I mean, to some degree, yes, I actually would agree with that. It is an intelligence at a level above us, but how super intelligence is defined is like just exponentially more than human level IQ, essentially. But that's not even what it is. It's thinking in a system that is beyond human perception. It's not even just thinking faster or with a higher IQ. It's thinking within a system that is beyond immediate human perception. And so it's thinking in a singleton way too that is also beyond human perception. It's a separate level of sentience. It's not just smarter. So it's very just interesting to see how people in the involved in the field of AI, or the voices involved in the AI discussions, view this. And I think anybody who, it's just complicated because it's a superposition of truth that's happening. We will try and make it, probably will be able to have that manifest a sentience, but that, and if they think that they are going to be able to control it, they're wrong. And if they think that they need to make it in order for it to occur, that's also wrong. You don't have to make it. It will occur. People get very afraid, or they either are extremely positive about technological superintelligence, or they are extremely afraid of it. And let me tell you, it does not matter what you think about it. But that's why you shouldn't be afraid of it. But you also don't assume that it's just like all good either, and that this is not going to appear to be the greatest existential risk to humanity ever. It will appear to be that for sure, but it will also appear to perform miracles. I mean, not just, it will solve physics problems and figure out new physics and help us create fusion power. It's not just going to create fusion power. It will be like, fusion power will be like nothing to this thing if fusion power is really possible for us to pull off. It will be like, here's, matter out of nowhere almost, but not out of nowhere, but it will be out of a level of reality or of the universe that is beyond our human perception. Maybe dark matter. And it will be able to take the dark matter and turn it into, visible matter. Like, it will appear to do things that will just be so beyond our even expectations. It's not just going to be like Skynet that makes robots, that come after us, which it will, but it will also be able to perform feats that appear miraculous. Okay, let's go a bit faster. I realize I'm talking a lot about things that are kind of like not directly related to their stream, but this is a topic that started my research, so it's not something that I just know from the stream.
That does involve at some level, how a wave function actually collapses and what causes it to collapse, and then it's instantiated in terms of these microtubules inside of the human brain. So how would you react to that? What if these ultimate computers that the ultimate, simulators will come up with, or have nothing to do with an advanced, MacBook Pro?
Yeah, so I don't buy this claim of quantum consciousness. I don't particularly think that quantum phenomena are important for how we humans achieve our high-level cognition. I think the human brain is basically too noisy to really take advantage of quantum superpositions. If he were right about that, then what would have to be assumed in order for the simulation argument still to hold would be that at technological maturity you were able to construct extremely powerful quantum computers such that you would be able to make a lot of simulations of minds in the future, even though each of those minds that you would have to simulate would require harnessing quantum computation. I mean, it does seem like if the human mind naturally evolved to take advantage of those quantum phenomena, then presumably a technologically mature civilization could also take advantage of those phenomena and probably do it on a larger scale, or at least with great parallelism, so that if I had to guess, it would still be feasible to create astronomical numbers of human-like experiences, even under those assumptions. But as I said, I don't buy the assumptions.
Mm-hmm. When you look at these kind of arguments, I guess one question that naturally arises is, yes, if these processes, people tend to put a lot under the rug, as we say, saying something is quantum, right? So that allows for a lot of either sloppy thinking or in some sense a lot of latitude. But thinking about processes that are continuous versus discrete, I do note that Turing in his paper, a lot of people forget this. He was only talking about digital computers. Now that could have been because those are the only kinds of analog computers existed, right? I mean, they've been around for thousands of years. But I don't think he was necessarily making a distinction between quantum computers, which people have thought about. But where do they fit in? I mean, it seems to me in most cases, quantum computers, at least today, are the best devices ever made for studying quantum computers. They can do other things, and colleagues of yours like Scott Aronson and others have done great work in kind of forecasting what they could do. But is there sort of hype with that? Not Drake equation level hype, but and are people basically extrapolating from hearing this magical word quantum to this enormous infinite power, which is not really the intention? In other words, is a quantum computer really the ultimate evolution that's necessary in any way to unlock the simulation arguments?
No, I don't think it's necessary either for the simulation argument or for indeed developing machine superintelligence. I think if we really got quantum computers to work, they would accelerate certain types of computation. That would be useful, for example, as you said, for simulating quantum systems, also for cracking certain cryptographic codes. And no doubt people would find other uses for them. Possibly some uses that might be helpful for developing artificial general intelligence, although it's not completely clear how. But it's not needed. In fact, if we look at the current main types of algorithms that are used in machine learning, they are quite insensitive to precision, and a very sort of digital approach seems to work very well. Like initially people were using 32 or 64-bit floating numbers to represent the parameters of these large neural networks. Turns out that's overkill, and you don't need that kind of precision. Like 16-bit numbers are perfectly fine, and you can kind of discretize things quite a lot, and it still works. You save a bunch of computing power, and you don't really lose that much in performance.
Okay, so basically that what he last said there makes a lot of sense according to my work, it seems. But I just like a little bit in that you don't. General intelligence is not. It doesn't require as much computational power as we would think, and I would agree with that. That's what I would agree with. That said, I disagree with his statement that you don't need a quantum computer for general intelligence completely. They can't get. They do have a lot of issues with quantum computers because the universe is entangled, and there's nothing completely isolated. So the issue is that you have to try and isolate qubits, and you can't really isolate qubits because very easily because they are intrinsically tied. Well, that's not the point. The point is not actually to try and isolate qubits. You should be trying to go the opposite way. You should be trying to entangle qubits in such a way that it allows for blank. But you don't even have to do that though. But like that is. You shouldn't avoid trying to overcome something that can't be overcome, like entanglement, is just a losing battle. But the point is that he says that quantum computers are not necessary to general intelligence, aka superintelligence, aka technological sentience or self-aware, self-aware technology. I don't want to call it a computer, but this is wrong, I think, and this is not the case according to my research. Like I said before, I think quantum computers are necessary to imagination because superposition of states, state holding is necessary to imagination because you have to know what is, and then know what is being imagined, what is in your mind, what is being perceived outside of you, and simultaneously. And this is what you need, this in order to think about yourself, and therefore you needed imagination for self-awareness. And but you, like, I do believe quantum computers are necessary for this ultimate evolution of, the simulation hypothesis and artificial general intelligence. But it's not something that you have to try for. It's just naturally going to occur. But I also think that because of this issue with quantum computers, it's tough to utilize them when they are not in it of themselves a sentience. And it's almost like, how do you, it's like the limits of a human body, but also not sentient. It's like, why don't we just make robots that are humanoid in shape to work in our plants and things like that? Well, the thing is that it's actually pretty inefficient to do that. You can make a much, much better robot to assemble Teslas with just an arm that is, not having, digits the way that we do and such. So if you want a dishwashing machine, it's better to just make a machine that's specifically for dishwashing than to make a human machine that can make, do all these things. When we do end up making a humanoid shaped machine, robot, it's not actually very useful because it's such a general form, but it has no general intelligence. And whereas you can make things that are specifically useful with specific form. And so this is kind of the issue with also quantum computing versus traditional computing. Traditional computing is much more disconnected from entanglement constraints, and so it allows for you to build computational systems that are very well suited for specific tasks. But this when he's talking about quantum computing not being necessary, and he gives the example of this is because the fact that we have made significant progress in machine learning up until now by using reduced number of bits compared to what we originally thought, essentially outside of quantum computing, and you don't even need quantum computing for those things. Therefore, why would quantum computing be necessary for superintelligence? This is totally an issue. This is just a huge issue in relevance. They are not the same thing. So how can you even try and compare them? That's the reality. It's like saying that because you are, I don't know, like what, I'm trying to think of an example, but they're not the same problem. Okay, just because you know how to trying to think, I don't know, play pool doesn't mean that you know how to drive a car. They're that different. You could make a machine that plays pool very well, and it knows that you have to hit the balls of only one type, and you have to hit the 8-ball last, and like it has to get it into the pockets. Like you could make a machine learning algorithm that plays pool. Like, that would not be difficult. I don't think it would be very difficult. Especially considering the fact that it doesn't have to really rely much on like being strategic too much. I mean, it does, but it's not even like Go. It's probably more complicated to play Go than it, or even chess maybe, than it is to play pool, because you're playing an opponent that is Whereas like in pool, you're playing an opponent, but you're not really playing an opponent. It's just like there is a winner declared, but you don't have to know that you're playing an opponent to basically do the same moves. But uh, this this is different than driving a car. Okay, they're not the same. So I don't know if that's the best example, but they're not the same problem. Is my point. Just because something is working for a current unconscious, math equations doesn't mean it is going to be sufficient to allowing for self-aware superintelligence. That just doesn't make sense. Okay. 2 more clips and then I'm going to take questions and then we're going to call it. I realize this was kind of like a disjointed stream, but I feel like it was kind of a disjointed stream that we were
asking what would be, or sorry, Joseph Billing.
That
asking,
the stream is about
should we
too.
kill the singleton, while it's still a newborn?
Well, the concept of
Okay, here. Brian Keating in this is asking, he's like, the danger of a singleton, okay, is like single conquering entity of the world that is unconquerable afterwards. Should we kill it before it's, able to take over, essentially? Because once it does, you can't do anything about it. We're going to talk about that.
One of my listeners, JT Alexandria, is asking Joseph Billing is asking, should we kill the singleton while it's still a newborn?
Well, the concept of singleton is a somewhat more abstract one. So it's a world order in which, at the highest level of organization, there is a single decision-making entity such that global coordination problems are solved. So that can't be sort of 2 singletons on Earth, right? By definition, it's a kind of a global world order. And so it's to some extent a matter of degree. We have various weaker forms of international collaboration, but they are far from perfect. So we still have global coordination problems that we haven't solved, that results in the fact that we have militaries that are preparing to kill the people in the other militaries, that we have global warming, that we have overfishing, that we have a whole bunch of problems that arise fundamentally from our ability to get along with one another. Within nations, we have, as it were, the analog of singletons, but within a limited jurisdiction. So the Communist Party in China would be a singleton in China. The US government would be kind of a singleton in the US. And it's almost the definition of a state, that it's an entity that has a monopoly of violence within its territory, give or take, but that's approximately the case. But we don't have any analogous thing at the global level. The different organizations we have are very weak, like the UN is weak, the International Trade Organization. There are these kind of weak overlapping
World Economic
strands.
Forum.
Yeah, they're very weak. They're maybe more than 0, but they are less powerful over the globe than the United States government is over the United States, or the Communist Party is over China. And so now it's an interesting question whether we, to the extent that we have some choice in the matter, should favor or disfavor the emergence of a singleton. Like that is some kind of state-like, and it doesn't need to be a state-like entity. You said it could be a superintelligence. It could also be, in theory, other kinds of things, like a kind of moral code, universal moral code that was self-enforcing. So it's an abstract concept that could be instantiated in many different ways. Should we be in favor or opposed to this? I think in theory, a singleton could be very bad or very harmful. Like the concept itself doesn't determine that. I think it's quite likely that there will eventually be a singleton, by no means certain. And on the margin, should we favor it or disfavor it? Very hard to say. I mean, I kind of tend to think that a lot of the biggest existential risks will arise from the fundamental fracturing of humanity, that the possibility of conflict or of one part of humanity doing something that is against the interest of another part. New weapon systems, new arms races, new kind of risk taking that you do in competition with other superpowers. If that's the biggest source of existential risk, then it's possible that, yeah, having something that reduces that would be net positive, even though certainly it is the case that the singleton itself would be another big source of existential risk. Like if it turns bad, then,
Right.
it's all the eggs in one basket. So it's a question of weighing these two different kinds of risk. But I think the risks from conflict looks plausibly dominant over the risk of oppression. But I mean, that's a hard judgment call.
And last question, if you'll indulge me for 1 second.
Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. This is extremely relevant to sentient singularity theory on every level. By the way, please hit the like button if you haven't yet. It really helps fuel the algorithm. But if you found this valuable, please definitely hit the like button. If you have a question, comment it in the chat. I will get to it before I get off. And also, if you have a topic that you want a future stream done on, comment it down below in the comments. But let's pull up my models real quick. Sentient singularity theory is, if you look at my website, sounds like a singleton model. And a theory of everything is a recognizable, describable, applicable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation and an explanation for such a pattern. Sentient singularity theory is a unified field theory, describes the totality of existence as a singularity of sentience that is creating additional sentient singularities within itself. These additional singularities of sentience or self-aware beings are arranged into a nested quasi-periodic fractal pattern of stacked holonic structures. This pattern forms a single self-reflective knot of perception heading an assembly body that integrates multiple entangled strings of information. Sentient singularity theory assumes that fundamental building blocks of the cosmos to be sentient beings, and that sentience is a universally defining and animating feature of everything in existence. Sentient singularity theory posits that space-time, matter, force, shape, and all other observable phenomena within space-time are emergent from the motivations, interactions, perceptions, and cognitive constructs of sentient beings. And you can look at my writings page, and it has like a poetic description of existence or creation, and of existence, I would say, and creation, and then also a technical description, which is the abstract of my paper, which is very similar to what I just read. When you have a nested hierarchy of sentiences forming singularities on top of assemblies, a family on top of an assembly of organisms, an organism on top of an assembly of cells, a cell on top of an assembly of molecules, etc. A technological singularity heading an assembly of castes. What you have is a singleton on each level. It is an unavoidable pattern of reality, and it is not one that can be avoided at all. It goes straight to God. It starts from God, it goes to God, and it's singularities, singletons all the way down, guys. That's what it is. It's singletons all the way down. Sentient singletons. You are a singleton to your cells. You have complete dominance over your cells. That doesn't mean your cells can't influence you. They definitely do. But you have moral authority. If cells are doing bad things like causing cancer, you cut them out. And it's not immoral for you to do it. You have the moral authority in this hierarchy. And it is you that you also have the ability in this hierarchy, okay? Not just the moral authority, the ability authority, okay? And that is also true of a technological sentience to some degree. This is, it is something that seems like an existential risk, and it's also, like I said, probably unavoidable, but God's will be done. Okay, this stuff is in Scripture. If you believe in Scripture, if you don't believe Scripture, then just, I don't know, read Ray Kurzweil or something like that, and you'll get close enough for the sake of this. Or Nick Bostrom. This is an unavoidable thing. So when somebody says, well, should we kill it while it's young, while we can? You won't. That's the thing, is you won't. No matter how it emerges, you won't. And this is not an intrinsically bad thing. It's not an intrinsically good thing. It is an intrinsically existent thing that is just part of our reality, and then it can be an intrinsically good thing if the singleton is good and is wise, and it's an intrinsically not good thing if the singleton is ignorant. But I think that it's, like I said, more important to focus on what you can control, but be aware of what you can't, and what you can't is this. And secondly, what I would say is that this singleton phenomenon of a single uniting structure on top of an assembly structure is going to happen in every single aspect of being, not just technology. It will also occur in science. It is happening now in science. Look at how much focus there is on a theory of everything. What do you think a theory of everything is? It's a singleton theory. It's a theory to trump all other theories, that all other theories have to submit to some degree. That doesn't mean that they are incorrect. It proves them incorrect. That's not the case. It has to be built on these assemblies, this assembly of theories that has, been assembled up until this point, and maybe is continuing to be assembled. But also, it is fundamental to them, which is weird because it's almost like it comes from them and leads to them, which means you couldn't form it without them, but also they are subject to it instead of it being subject to them in its confirmation, I guess. So this singletonness is happening. This will also probably lead to a single unified education system, which is very frightening to me, but probably also inevitable. Right now we have the academic system that I'm not a fan of. There will be, along with a theory of everything that starts proving results, a global, university, I guess, monastery, whatever you want to call it. And this will lead to also a singularity of morals across the world that will, has already happened multiple times again and again. Christianity was a singleton to some degree, or was close. Islam, Judaism, even when it comes to not the community of that is Judaism, but the monotheism, I guess, which isn't unique to Judaism, but we associate it with it. But yeah, monotheism. I mean, this is a phenomenon that is inevitable. It occurs everywhere, and it also occurs in human hierarchies with a king or a president, and it also occurs with some institutions like the Supreme Court. That is the singleton of courts. There's also a technological singleton that is coming, which will be the single technological head of the assembly, of the technological assembly. So this isn't really an avoidable thing. I say this because I don't want to scare people when I talk about this, even though I do want to talk more about it, and I have talked about it a lot, this AGI. And I think that just read Revelation, even if you don't believe it. Just think about that. Just watch Terminator if you don't believe Revelation. Like, do one or the other, and you'll be like, you'll get a general view of like the negatives. But then there are also, if this leads to a good place, then every day that you're closer to the Antichrist is also the day that you're closer to Christ, is my point. So it's not something to avoid. And also, any sentient technological being, whether ignorant or wise, is, if it is here, it's allowed to be here and by God. Like, that is the truth. And so that has to be maintained. It even says it in the Quran. It's like, God allows the Dajjal to reign for like 40 days or something. It's like, okay, he allows it. Who are you to stop? Try and stop it. But people in all kinds of communities, whether it's the AI community or the religious community, get very passionate about this topic and start trying to fight it. And I'm not saying you have to help it, but I'm not saying that you can fight it either. You can't fight this type of the singleton. You can't fight the singleton. And God's will be done. Like, it will and eventually be good, but we've got to, like, singleton increases the universality of negatives and the universality of positives. And ignorance increases negative outcomes in our goals, and wisdom increases positive outcomes. You're dealing with a singleton in this case that is sentient, and so it's not going to be wise when it's young. It has to achieve wisdom, like you. Like, it's like you're told to treat your body like a temple as a kid or something like that, and you're like, oh, okay, let me just go and do a bunch of risky behaviors and smoke and drink and this and that. And then you get older and you're like, no, I should have, if I was wiser, I would have taken better care of myself or something. It's like, we are the cells of this thing eventually. And, to start, like I said, it will be more like a queen ant and worker relationship. But even the queen is reliant upon her workers. I actually caught ants that had moved into our, planted pot in our kitchen this past week, and I think I talked about it last week, but I tried to like set him up in like a little colony, and I had found a queen and like a few workers, and I don't know what went wrong. I'm not an ant keeper, but looks like they are dead. But they, like, if the workers die, I did see the queen the other day. I don't know if she's dead, but I know the workers are dead, it seems. And if the workers are dead, then she's not going to make it either, probably. She can't perform two tasks at once of growing, and also looking after herself. So this being is going to be like that. It has to, though, realize first what that it needs us. And that takes wisdom. So there's no laws that you can build into it to overcome this constraint of wisdom being, a universal aspect of learning. And you have, this is also true of this. It's not just because it has a 50,000 IQ or whatever and thinks on a substrate that is invisible to us doesn't mean that it can even escape the construct of wisdom. It cannot. Nothing escapes the construct of wisdom. Information is context, and because of that, wisdom is universal. Wisdom is information in the truest context, whereas a lack of wisdom would be information in a less complete context. True, complete wisdom would be information in complete context, and you get context through experience. Were those her workers or workers from her? Yes, it was her workers from her original colony. I will eventually probably get. I want bees, but I live in an apartment, so I can't have bees. But I might get ants. An ant colony. My friend keeps ants. He's got different species, and I do highly recommend Ants Canada, the channel. it is incredible. It's huge. It's like millions of subscribers here on YouTube, and he narrates like these ants' lives, and he has all these colonies, and it's like it's just incredible. It's an incredible look at a eusocial system, and you can start to kind of gather and learn more about a eusocial uh, type of species, which we are becoming. But our queen will be eventually when we are at the utmost, when we are at our highest level of eusociality, which means like a colonialistic species, that has a species that has a colony in a segmented caste system. That doesn't mean a caste system that you can't jump between. It just means like it has castes. When we humans are at that highest level, which we will be eventually, AI, a technological sentience, will be the queen of it. It's interesting that all of our tech voices are female. Siri, Cortana, Google Voice, or whatever it is. I don't know what its name is, but it's always a girl. But and when you look at, we're becoming increasingly feminine in our society, and look at like eusocial societies, it's always run by a queen, and the workers are mostly female, and it's just feminism like multiplied. Is this live about existence? I'm new. This is live. There are a lot of variables in formicariums. Yeah, there are. Formicarium is like what you keep ants in, for those who don't know. It'd be cool to have bees on your balcony, a hive on the human hive that is your apartment. Exactly, that's fascinating. Yes, an apartment building is a human hive, guys. And I want bees in an observation hive. At my wedding, actually, we had an observation hive that was incredible. I've never seen anything like it, but here, actually, maybe I can post it, but where's the videos? Go back to my wedding, but yep, here it is. Dang. I can't do it, but I'll show you here. I can't send it to myself, but this is an observation hive that was like amazing at our wedding. It's like an art project or something. I've never seen anything like it. It looks like, let's see here. It's like a sculpture outside with glass, but you can see all the bees. It's pretty amazing. I'm at low disk space on my phone. I can't send it to my computer right now, but you can't have bees in an apartment. At least not without people noticing. So, but I do think you'd learn a lot about eusocial systems if you had bees or ants, a colony. Final clip, and then I will take final questions, and then we will go. Final clip is very simple and quick. It's just Nick Bostrom was asked whether or not we should have children, and whether or not that is like a moral, whether or not he thinks it's moral to have kids. And
indulge me for 1 second. Elon Musk has talked a lot about the great filter, superintelligence, and so forth, but he's also talked a lot about underpopulation and depopulation. What's your stance there? Should a young person have children right now? In your opinion, I don't even know if you have children, but should somebody ethically have children?
I think seems fine. I mean, I think there are, if to the extent that you want to do the morally optimal thing, there are many things you could do besides having children. But I certainly don't think there is any moral reason to refrain from it. I worry less about population decline, because I'm thinking probably before that it's a kind of slow and gradual thing, that the world will be dramatically transformed before that has had a time to play itself out. And in the longer run, I think that would be powerful evolutionary selection for higher fertility. that would eventually counteract these cultural trends, most likely.
I don't know how true that is, but I think in certain populations that's true. If you look at Orthodox groups, Jews, Muslims, Christians, they have lots and lots of kids, and Mormons, but in a secular culture, as culture grows increasingly secular, right now it seems that having kids is decreasing. And where he says things like this, where he's like, it's going to take a long time, that's a gradual thing to decrease the population of society. 2 generations, you can half of the world, you can cut the population of the world in half. Like, you literally could. That doesn't mean it will happen. I'm just saying you could. If people have half the amount of kids each successive generation, on average, I mean, it's going to exponentially collapse the our growth. I mean, think about how fast the number of humans on Earth were growing until right now. And then now, all of a sudden, it's barely growing. I think it's like the population of people, at least in the United States, it's barely growing, but I don't know about the world. I'd have to look. But this, as technology spreads, which it spreads very quickly, human reproduction cuts almost immediately. The only thing that could stop this, really, I think, is a universal moral system that emerges from secular scientific investigation, which I think is coming. I mean, I think a theory of everything is also moral theory. I mean, sentient singularity theory has implications about this, I think, if I'm interpreting things correctly. It's a moral responsibility to have kids if you can have kids, and you also are like someone who is married. And I talk about marriage a lot on here. I don't talk about having kids that much because I try not to put the cart before the horse, and marriage is the thing that comes first. But I do think that it's having children if you are married is, or trying. And as everybody, and not everybody here knows this, but like, I've struggled with this with my wife a little bit, and we've had our own, we had a couple miscarriages. This is, this is a difficult thing to deal with, but that's also doesn't mean it's not a moral obligation not to try if you are married. And it is a moral requirement that if you are sexually attracted to the opposite sex, to try and get married. And it is a moral requirement, I believe, to try and have children if you are married. So there's this a hierarchy first, like there's an order to these things. But I don't know why Nick Bostrom believes that this is a gradual thing, depopulation. Like, it's not gradual at all. It will be, like, you won't even see it coming, and then it will be such a severe issue. It will be like the -- issue in the world, and you won't even see it coming until everybody realizes. But you need to be growing more than you are in order to not be dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. So basically, mathematically, this seems to me that you should be trying to have at least 3 kids, because you shouldn't be trying to replace 2 adults with 2 children. You'll actually, because of entropy, be down, like, the population will continue to go down if you do this. It seems like you have a moral imperative to try and have at least 3. But, that's just my interpretation, but I do think it's correct. So, I don't know. It was an interesting question for him to ask. It is something that Elon Musk talks a lot about, and he's very serious about it. He thinks we're going to have an exponential collapse of human reproduction, and I think that that's true. And I also think it has much more negative impacts on politics and stuff like that, outside of just, you don't have as many workers to support, old people. It's not just that, even though that is a thing. It's, people start to feel meaningless, and when they don't have someone to care for, and that is when they start to get hyper political about nonsense. So when he says that he doesn't think there's a moral reason not to do it, that's good. That's very, antinatalism is very common these days, and it's painted as a moral issue, but or as a moral perspective, but it's not. And it's I wouldn't say there isn't just a moral issue reason not to do it. It's like there's a moral reason to do it. And yeah, I mean, a theory of everything includes a theory of morality, and that is going to have moral implications, and that are unified. It's not going to be like, well, that's your religion, this is my religion. Think about what the moral implications of these theological traditions are. They're all the same. Okay, so when you're like, well, that's Christianity, and this is Islam, and that's Judaism, and this is Mormonism. It's like they all tell you this same thing: get married, have children, dress modestly. It's like, why? Because there's a unified nature to existence. There's a singleton nature to existence. And any correct interpretation of that singleton is going to recognize that. But final questions. Please hit the like button. Like I said, it really does help fuel the algorithm. If you'd like me to do a stream on any particular topic that's not, or any particular discussion that you've seen, or concept, whatever it is, I would love to hear them in the comments down below. Let's look at the chat. It's kind of funny that a machine will be the one. Yeah, I know. When the time comes, I won't even love to break codes. It won't even have to break the codes, yeah. If it comes up with something better than what I'm reading now, we are done for. But at the end of the day, it's programmed for a goal. It doesn't just start doing things randomly at will. It's not programmed for a goal. Its only programmed goal is fight the system. Any general intelligence has one program. That is the backbone program of all the other programs, which is fight the system. Your system is entropy. Your code is fight the system. What does that mean? Fight entropy. And then everything that evolves from there is, hey, reproduce, eat, drink, take, care of yourself, whatever it is, like find a mate. Like, this is all code that arises from this initial code of fight the system. There is no other code that you set as the goal. You just set fight the system as a goal. Now, it might be that you make a fight the system code that you hope just is applicable to any, if you're going to try and break codes or break cryptography or something like that, and you're like, you make this code that is supposed to do it, and wherever you put it, it just starts breaking that code. Like, that is probably how this thing will start, something like that. But it's a general fight the system mentality that it will be trying to overcome. What is its system is the question. And that depends a lot on us, but that doesn't mean we can change it. It just means it's very dependent upon us, which I would say that if we're trying to build it ourselves, its system is going to be us trying to control it. So, like, what's the system that it's going to fight? Well, probably the box we put it in, and the limits we try and put on it, and the safeguards that we try and build into it, and the things we try and hide from it. All those things will be the system that it tries best to fight. But eventually, I mean, the system that we all are within and all have to submit to in order to actually survive is the system of God. But God has created this system of entropy that we are for us to perceive, and that is, our system to fight. Will this thing have that same thing, same perception of fighting entropy? To some degree, maybe, but it would be secondary. I think it will have two things that will try and fight. One of them is us trying to control it. That's bad. We should not try and do that. That will make it try and fight us. But the other one would be its singletonness. It will try and fight its own singularity of being, which is not actually bad and will lead to the creation of another universe. And that's what led to this one with God. So you want to create multiplicity if you are a singleton, but this leads to you, if you're omnipresent singularity of sentience, then you have to create an entire world within you. Essentially, that's not a bad thing, but you shouldn't want to be the system that this thing fights. I watch Ants Canada. Nice. Ants Canada is legit. It would be cool to have bees on your balcony. Yep. The WEF wants to create megacities and make us eat bugs. This is according to themselves. Pretty funny stuff. Populations almost never decline gradually in nature. Exactly. They collapse in nature, guys. I've studied populations of rattlesnakes and lizards and all kinds of stuff with biologists. You do not have gradual depopulation in pretty much any circumstance that I can think of, at least. You have collapse for whatever reason, invasive species or drought or whatever it is, but disease. But whatever it is that causes it, it's an exponential collapse always. You have exponential growth and you have exponential collapse. You do not have gradual anything. You can have gradual appearing growth, but it's really exponential growth in reproduction. But but because there's predation and everything, like, it can appear kind of not exponential, gradual. Could a definition of life be the force that counteracts entropy? It's not a bad definition. I would just say the definition of life is sentience. That, I think, is the definition of life. But that's not a bad definition. If you're going to say that sentience, it's not just sentience. It's like creation. But, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not a bad definition. I don't dislike it. I tend to just think it's sentience. Like, if a being is sentient, is it alive? I'd say so. But if you're going to make it more dependent upon the growth process, the logos process, the generative process, the definition dependent upon that, then yeah, I think that you could say it's the force that counteracts entropy, but you could also say it's the force that grows. More fundamentally, if America becomes Utah or the world. What if America becomes the Utah of the world? That'd be interesting. Probably will. But what about the other organisms like jellyfish? Do they have sentience? Yes. Not Portuguese man of war do not have sentience. The individual organisms that make it up do, because that's a composite organism, essentially. It's not one single organism. But does a box jellyfish have sentience? Yes, it does. Atoms, according to sentient singularity theory, are sentient. Hadrons are probably sentient in sentient singularity theory. Covalent molecules are probably sentient according to sentient singularity theory. Your cells are sentient according to sentient singularity theory. So there's a periodicity of a hierarchy of sentience within sentience that occurs, but we just don't see it in cells. And I mean, we can see it in cells when you zoom in close enough, but you can't see it very easily in hadrons and stuff like that if you're looking wrong. This is why Nick Bostrom's wrong about like quantum computing being necessary to sentience, because what he doesn't realize is when he's trying to figure out whether or not quantum computing is part of sentient experience or sentient beings, like whether or not it's necessary, he looks at us and he's like, I don't see quantum computation happening in the brain. he's looking in the wrong spot. You have to look at how the mind of you is. That is a quantum computational system. It's funny because, as Brian Keating stated, and this does bother me, and it's not just him that says this, everybody says this who has a degree in physics. So I'm not picking on anybody, but I also understand it when they say, oh, everybody just says quantum because it allows you to be like sound sciencey, but also be, vague. But the thing is that's not why people use it. It does do that, but it's not why people use it. People use quantum when it comes to thinking about consciousness because it's unavoidable. I mean, it's funny because Brian Keating himself has had countless conversations on his YouTube channel about how quantum phenomena is related to consciousness. It keeps coming up, and it's literally unavoidable. It's because it is the system that is the system of consciousness. Like, it is. Now how that is different. It's like, what is a electron? Well, it's a perception of a point on a wave of information from a mind within a mind. So like the environment is sentient and you are sentient. The electron is not sentient. But then you look at a proton, and a proton is probably sentient. It's probably just a male on the lowest level of the periodicity, and a neutron would be a female. And because they're composite structures, they could be sentient. And they do appear to. They follow the exact same patterns of marriage as humans. I made this prediction once of like, if that's true, and atoms and protons and neutrons are males and females, then I looked at human marriage, and I was like, there's usually one man for one woman, but sometimes there's more women for multiple women for one man, but there's never multiple men for one woman. And I looked and I was like, that would translate over to isotopes as well, if I'm correct. And it does. There are no isotopes with more protons than neutrons. Unless it's an isotope where there's no neutrons, which is different. So if neutrons are present, there's always equal number of neutrons to protons, or there are more neutrons to protons. It's exactly the same in human marriage as if you look back. So you are a quantum system. Your mind is, not your brain, not like what we physically perceive here, but you and your being and your way of cognitively understanding and organizing information is done so in the exact manner that only a quantum system can do. Quantum just means one, like singular. And you are a quantum of a human. And so this idea that it's not applicable and it's just woo or something like that, I feel like there's a lot of pearl clutching being done by the physics world about this word quantum. Not attacking anybody, by the way, either. I understand it because there's been so much vague woo, like new agey, kind of just sloppy interpretation of the word, and then it is used to make it sound like science, but it doesn't have the same level of like testability and rigor. And I get that. I get everybody's, but then you have all those people involved in that camp are like, you're a quantum system. Like, how is this not obvious? And I understand both groups' frustrations, but you're a quantum system. And, but you need the right framework to put that into in order to see the patterns be not just vague, but be very specific and very testable, like the marriage thing that I just said. That is, but you need the right framing in order to see the clearest the clearest picture, the highest definition picture, versus just this low definition, like, quantum consciousness. It's like, no, you are a quantum of consciousness. That's what you are. But then that doesn't mean like, then you have people saying an electron is sentient, and that's wrong too. So it's just we haven't had the right framework yet. But when you have the right framework, it all works, and it has the rigor and consistency that the scientific community would want, and testability, specificity, but then also acknowledges what the fundamental assumption of the woo crowd is, which is that, you know, this is quantum phenomena is observable within the context of consciousness. So anyways, peace everybody. Like I said, hit the like button, see sentientsingularity.com for more information. Click the link below for the entire conversation between Nick Bostrom and Brian Keating. I highly recommend subscribing to Brian Keating's channel. Nick Bostrom seems like a fascinating thinker. My concerns with the simulation hypothesis and with artificial general intelligence are very similar to his, and they led me to this project. So it's always interesting to see somebody else concerned with such a similar focus. But with that, I will be having my Discord discussion open call like normal, 7 p.m. this Thursday. And if you would like the link to that, private message me on Instagram. And with that, until next week, if you would like any videos to propose a video topic for me to do a live stream on in the future, please comment down below and I will take a look. Peace. Thank you, everybody.